We're not going to go into a lot of anecdotes because there are tens of thousands of them. We don't have time. But let's do this one because it really takes it back through the layers of the being and throughout their lifetime. So if you just kind of encapsulate the story of Robert and his digestive issues and what you learned in sessions with him.
Yeah, he was wonderful. Robert was successful gentleman, in his late 30s or early 40s, and he was having a lot of trouble. In fact, the kind of digestive issues that doctors couldn't get a handle on. And he didn't know what to do. He came to me for a session. And the interesting thing about this story is not just what I saw for his body physically for digestive recommendations, because that was there. That's always there as part of medical intuition, is we ask the body what it wants. It shows us or tells us or gives us that information, and that's what we impart to the client. But where the issue came from for him was multifaceted, that life history piece, which is so fascinating to look at because we don't necessarily correlate that in our minds. So what I saw for him was for the origin of these issues for him in the present moment is that he was very, very close with his mother. And his mother had recently died, and she was in a foreign country when she died. And he was also experiencing some stress from work issues and projects that he was going on. So that was the present moment. When I looked into life history, I saw that at age 9, there was an incident from school. And that was something that he might have never even thought about again. But it was an incident where he was feeling very alone and very scared. And he was supposed to go on a trip with his classmates. And his stomach was acting up because there was a lot of stress there. And he was basically told he was feeling like he should suppress his emotions, right? He couldn't feel what he was feeling. He would be embarrassed. His teachers might yell at him, whatever was happening. And in that moment, he made what became an unconscious kind of subconscious drive to man up. That was the message.
Yeah, he was just a little guy.
He was 9 years old, little kid. You man up. You can't talk about how you're afraid. He needed to run to the bathroom. His stomach was just bothering him. That was a very pivotal moment in his life because he made a conscious, aware idea kind of established itself. And that idea was that you don't talk about your emotions. You don't express your feelings. You keep it quiet. The next issue I saw, the next life experience I saw for him was he was 3 years old, and his mother had come down with like a flu or something, but she had to be isolated from him. And that was the first time in his young life he'd ever been isolated from mother. And it was devastating for him. She was isolated for like 3 weeks or something. It was a heavy flu. This was in in a foreign country. And he just had this idea that, he was being abandoned. And that abandonment caused another, I would say, unconscious or subconscious idea that established itself in his energy that, he was going to be abandoned or separated from somebody, that he had no control over it. This was really powerful for him in his life. Now, again, as adults, we think about, well, sure, maybe my mother got sick and she was, separated from me for 3 weeks. It probably didn't affect me at all. She was back. But really what happens is we have these moments in life that in the present moment get triggered by these early life experiences. And that's what was happening for Robert. Let me put the pieces together. In the present moment, when his mother died recently, he started experiencing gut dysbiosis. That's when it began. And yes, stress, and yes, grief. But what about this life history that was also driving the show here? He was not in the same place with his mother, and he felt he had to be stoic and continue forward in life no matter what.
Right.
From that 9-year-old experience
and 3-year-old
experience, all of that together caused this really intense, in the moment, gut imbalance that was, unsolvable to medical health. Now, you think, well, okay, well, now that we know all this, what do we do with all this? Well, Robert's body had a lot of suggestions on how to adjust and, try different things he hadn't considered. And just hearing that validation of his own, the origin of his issues, the trajectory of it was so powerful for him. When we reconnected, he said that was the key in the lock that opened the door to healing, because he'd been suffering with this for quite a while. He said that allowed me to start thinking about my health in a different way, to start thinking about my emotions in a different way. Maybe I shouldn't be so stoic. Maybe I shouldn't be repressing them. Maybe I need to grieve more. And he really began to take hold of his health. And because of that, it just was a really wonderful story to include, because it had such an impact in his life.
Right. It's a wonderful story. You have several in there. And I'm thinking about the medical industry itself in that, as it says in the book, even doctors say we overprescribe, we send out for too many tests, and it's all for liability purposes. Everybody's trying to save their butt. And it's at the expense of the consumer. So, or the patient, but we're really considered more consumers than patients, I think, in a lot of these larger situations, HMOs and such. And so here you have medical error as the third to fourth largest contributor to death in the United States, medical error. And this is an area, to me, it seems absolutely critical to have medical intuitives involved in. And you do have one story in there, very briefly, about a young girl who was having a little shard of something trying to move out. It turned out it was kidney stones, massive amount of pain. They couldn't find it. You saw it. She finally, when she was on opioids and everything, because they didn't get it. Finally, they got it after your reading. She went in, they corrected it, but she was hooked on opioids and died of an overdose. How sad is that?
Oh, it's tragic. And I would imagine this kind of thing happens frequently. As you mentioned, the stats on medical error are shocking. The stats on the brokenness and the inefficiency or whatever, for physicians and for patients, it's just, the numbers are just ridiculous. And when a medical intuitive who knows what the value is looks at that, our feeling is this is just so unnecessary. It shouldn't be happening. And how do we shift that paradigm is the question.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And you might also want to consider joining Patreon, which allows me to keep all of this content free and available to everyone. And if you're looking for like-minded souls, you might also enjoy my online community called Our Neighborhood. Links to join are in the description.